Thank you, Dr. Hammond. You've given us so much good information to think about this. I know at CDC, where I am in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we work every day in the real world setting with states and communities, and we often think about those natural complements. What's the work we need to do in implementation and sustainability, and really tailoring to that context. But as you've said, we really, in thinking about the researcher audience and the researcher practitioner audience, have so much to learn about how to really support communities and accelerate this work. So next, I'm excited to have Dr. Wilma Waterlander, who is an assistant professor and principal investigator in Amsterdam at the University of Amsterdam, Department of Public Health and Occupational Health. Her research focuses on public health and obesity prevention with a focus on system dynamics, food policy, and food systems. She recently completed a 5-year research program that combined methods from system dynamics with participatory action research to develop an innovative, accessible, and sustainable approach to promote healthy lifestyles in 10 to 14-year-olds in multi-ethnic groups with lower socioeconomic position in Amsterdam. The research was conducted in close collaboration with the City of Amsterdam and provides important lessons on how to implement a system dynamics approach in practice. Dr. Waterlander was a fellow for the Lancet Commission on Obesity, Undernutrition, and Climate Change, and is a fellow of the International Council for Science Food Futures Early Career Network. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this introduction. Welcome everyone. You can go to the next slide, please. My disclosures are that the research that I present today were funded by the Dutch Heart Foundation, and as was said in the introduction, are a collaboration between our university, the academic hospital, and the City of Amsterdam. Next slide, please. Well, because I'm an international speaker and I'm based in Amsterdam, I thought I'd give a little bit of context to this American audience. Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands, as you can see in the bottom map there. And just the Netherlands is located in the northwest of Europe. And it's famous for lots of things. And one of the things are its bikes. So you see here cycling in front of the university where we work. And also a lot of the principles that I will present today, I learned that during my studies at the University of Auckland at the other side of the world. So I wanted also to acknowledge that. Next slide, please. Yes. So Dr. Hammond already did this beautiful introduction, and it very well aligns with what I'm going to talk about and what I mean with systems thinking, because lots of people have different ideas what it means. And when I say systems, I mean, first of all, looking at the whole and not just the separate parts. So trying to see the entire system and what is happening. And also how you can apply different types of systems methods, such as mapping, also loop diagrams, and other system dynamics methods to understand and change the system. Next slide, please. One of the things that is quite important here, and what I mean when talking about systems, is the work that we did in the Lancet Commission. And one of the things is that we looked at all of these international reports at high level, like UN reports, WHO, and looked at the recommendations from these reports, what governments should do. Next slide, please. I click next again, sorry. Yeah, and you see that we kind of have a pretty good idea about things that should happen. So this is the WHO European report from 2022, saying that there's no single intervention that can solve obesity, and we need this comprehensive approach with monitoring frameworks and really a systems response. Next slide, please. But if we know what to do, then why is it not really happening already for quite a while? Next slide, please. So this is what we discussed in the Lancet report, and Dr. Hammond also mentioned it, this policy inertia. which is fueled by three things: food industry opposition. So you see there's a lot of opposition against certain strategies, like a sugar tax. There's also government reluctance to regulate, and this feeling of not wanting to battle a food industry, feeling paternalistic, for example. And also there's this feeling of a lack of public demand for policies. So there's not really a pressure for change. Next slide, please. And the idea with this systems thinking approach, and which is also what we applied in Amsterdam, which I will explain later in the talk, is that instead of trying to focus on the individual, which you can see on the left, the famous Dahlgren and Whitehead model, which shows the different levels that have an influence on individual behavior and disease and all of these things. But instead, we say this model should be turned inside out. And it's not so much that people have unhealthy behavior, but the fact that in the Netherlands, 60% of the population is overweight or obese is the outcome of a system, just like social equity, ecological health, and economic prosperity. So you see these problems as the outcome of the system, also meaning that the system has to change in a way to have better outcomes. Next slide, please. So this idea is that it's a complex problem, and there's various complex problems. So you have obesity, but also health inequalities, climate change, food insecurity. And all of these problems, they don't have a silver bullet. And also there's no linear pathway from evidence to policy. So that makes it difficult to navigate this. And next slide, please. And now I have this video which shows what we did in Amsterdam, or how we explain systems thinking. It's in Dutch, but it has subtitles. So I hope it will be clear to everyone. So please start the video.
Wat is systeemdenken en hoe gebruik je het? Rondom een maatschappelijk probleem zoals mentale gezondheid, slecht slapen, roken en overgewicht zijn verschillende factoren van invloed. Neem bijvoorbeeld overgewicht. In Nederland hebben zo'n 50% van de volwassenen en 12% van de kinderen daar last van. Om dit aan te pakken is meer nodig dan wat meer bewegen, gezonder eten en een goede nachtrust. Het probleem is gecompliceerder. De omgevingsfactoren van gezinnen zijn van invloed. Hoe is de woonsituatie? Lukt het om elke maand rond te komen? Ongezonde voeding en reclame is overal om ons heen. Zoals op weg naar school of werk en online. In het aanbod van de supermarkt is gezonde voeding vaak duurder dan ongezonde voeding. Gezonder gedrag en een gezonde omgeving zijn ook afhankelijk van politieke keuzes. Zoals gezond eten goedkoper maken en minder reclame van ongezonde voeding in het straatbeeld en online. Verzekeringsmaatschappijen en pensioenfondsen zouden kunnen stoppen met het investeren in fastfood en andere ongezonde producten en meer kunnen investeren in lokale voedingsproducenten. Zie je de complexiteit? Er zijn zoveel factoren die invloed hebben op onze gezondheid. We vertellen iemand om gezonder te gaan leven, terwijl we het hele systeem moeten aanpakken. Dit doen we als volgt. We brengen eerst het systeem in kaart vanuit alle denkbare perspectieven. Welke zaken spelen er bij mensen? En hoe ziet hun omgeving eruit? Welke belangen spelen er bij betrokken organisaties? Wat is de invloed van het politieke beleid? En hoe botst dat met economische belangen? Al deze factoren beïnvloeden elkaar en veranderen met de tijd. Vervolgens kijken we welke aangrijpingspunten de meeste invloed hebben op een positieve verandering. Ten slotte kijken we iedere keer of de acties de bijdrage leveren die we verwachten. We hebben bijvoorbeeld gezien dat als er helemaal geen snacks in schoolkantines aangeboden worden, dat jongeren dan naar de dichtstbijzijnde snackbar gaan. Je moet dus ook werken aan een gezonde omgeving buiten school. Een complex maatschappelijk vraagstuk los je dus niet op door je alleen op het individu te richten. We moeten eerst naar het hele systeem kijken en vanuit daar naar oplossingen zoeken. Werk jij ook aan complexe vraagstukken en wil je meer weten over systeemdenken? Neem dan contact met ons op voor meer informatie.
Thank you. Yes, you can go to the next slide, if that works. Yes, so we use this video quite a lot, and it's very helpful, for example, to local politicians or national politicians, because they really get it after explaining what we do, and they get really enthusiastic to do something about it. So from the theory, I thought it would be nice to tell you a little bit about how do you apply all these ideas in practice. So next slide, please. Yes, so what I will talk about is the Amsterdam Healthy Weight Program and the LIKE program, and they are very much interlinked. So the city of Amsterdam introduced in 2013 the Amsterdam Healthy Weight Program, and it was very unique that it had this long-term goal of 20 years. And with the ambition that no child should be overweight or obese in 2033. And the city is doing this by applying a whole of systems approach. Well, and within the Amsterdam Healthy Weight approach, we have the LIKE program that was very much focused on areas with a lower socioeconomic status in Amsterdam East. And it was really a way to have funding and to evaluate what was happening in the LIKE program. And also this part focused on children aged 10 to 14 years. So that's about the age when they move from primary to secondary school. So you can go to the next slide and go to the next slide again. Yes, so the idea behind the program is that it moves away from the traditional logic model, which you can see here, what we are accustomed to in public health, right? So that is that you have an input, which would be, for example, a sugar tax that leads to a certain output, which is higher prices, and then the outcome, lower purchases, and then eventually the impact, reduced obesity rates. Next slide, please. But this really, doesn't work if you have complex problems, which are really dynamic and they change over time, and it's not linear, of course. So next slide, please. We developed a different type of logic model behind the Amsterdam Healthy Weight Program. That is this theory of change of how can you develop the program logic for systems change. And it's the idea is that it's a continuous, integrated, a responsive action program that continuously changes over time and finds leverage points to change the system. So you can go to the next slide, please. And the idea was specifically for LIKE is that we wanted to create healthier living conditions for as well diet, sleep, physical activity, and screen use, using a participatory system dynamics approach, and well, as I explained in Amsterdam. You can go to the next slide. And this is the logic model that we developed for LIKE. So as you can see, it has this continuous feedback loop. And the idea is that we start with a needs assessment phase, which is about understanding the system, the pre-existing system from different perspectives, and then moving on to finding leverage points, developing actions, ideas, and then feedback into the system. So I'll explain that in a bit more detail. Next, please. So the first step, and I'll compare it to how we are used to do things, is you would normally often start with a baseline measurement, for example, baseline obesity rates or healthy diets. But we didn't do that. So we started with trying to understand the pre-existing system. And we use the term pre-existing because systems continuously change. So there's not something like a baseline system. Next slide. And this is how we did that. So we had all these different perspectives. So for example, we did a lot of participatory action groups with the teenagers themselves. This took a long time, so about 2 years to get to know the students and really work with them on a weekly basis. And also this included, well, their own research, photo voice, and also they developed their own causal loop diagrams. We also did a group model building with the target community and relevant stakeholders in the community. And we developed causal loop diagrams based on the literature. And then if you hit next, to give you an idea, yeah, so this was the systems map that we developed based on the combination of these different insights. Well, this all still looks very complex. So how do you then move on? Next, please. So the idea is that you then, well, it shows with the very complex systems map that there's not one single action that can solve everything. So instead of trying to do that, the idea is to find leverage points. So we did that in the system, and we try to find different ways of leverage in the system based on the work by Donello Meadows of intervening at 12 different levels. I think on the next slide. Yes, so we used a simplified version of the 12 levels, so the intervention level framework, where we found 5 different levels to intervene in the system. And this really helps to change the idea from having one action to really understand what are the system goals and beliefs and how can we change that. Next, please. So you can skip this, you can go to the next one. So then when we had these leverage points, so there were about 15, instead of developing an intervention, we developed an adaptive action program. Next, please. And just to give you an idea, I have some better slides now, but I couldn't integrate that anymore. But to give you an idea, so we developed all these actions on different system levels. And at the lowest level, there's just the quick actions like doing a healthy lunch action or to have a healthy canteen. But also the kids, they did a podcast with the CEO of Albert Heijn, Ahold, which is a very large supermarket concern. But also we try to get higher in the system. So for example, we are now implementing in the city of Amsterdam a legal instrument that bans new fast food outlets in the city. But of course, doing that takes a lot more time and a lot of sub-actions, like trying to get that on the political agenda and maybe start with some low-hanging fruit and then move on to something bigger. So that is really a different way of thinking about the intervention. Next slide. So in the end, in LIKE, we had about 63 action ideas that were developed over time by 12 different action groups, and 22 of these were actually implemented. So that might seem low, but that of course there's a lot of ideas generated and not everything can be implemented. And what is important to get from this is that this is really different from having one intervention. So it's just a lot of ideas, a lot of actions, and a lot of feedback to adapt actions over time. Next, please. So then the final step is about evaluation and impact. And yeah, this is really challenging. It took us a long time to think about how do you then measure impact if you don't look at BMI, but what do we then look at? So next, please. What we did is that we used, one of the things we did was using ripple effects mapping to capture the wider impacts of system change and what was happening. And I'll give you some key lessons learned to end with. So next, please. Yes, you can go next. Yes, so just to end my talk, some lessons learned from how do you implement this theory of systems and what does that mean in practice? And we are experiencing still today a lot of challenges. For example, one of the things we tend to do is really spend a lot of time on understanding the problem in terms of the content of the problem, for example, obesity. But you should spend equally as much time on understanding the context, like the political context, who is in charge, how do people feel. Well, we didn't really have enough time to do that. Also, it is really challenging when you do this and it's adaptive and dynamic. How do you involve the right stakeholders if you don't know when you start how this is going to change over time? So you might say it has to be participatory and it has to be dynamic, but how do you then do that when stakeholders are changing continuously? Next, please. Another thing is that it's really important to continuously reflect on your system boundaries. You can't change the whole system at once. So one thing is that we did also by having a participatory approach is that there were a lot of actions on a lot of different parts of the system, but maybe it might have been better to find one place, for example, the food system, where there was a lot of momentum and also political momentum to do something. So it might have been better to focus on that rather than also focusing on physical activity, sleep. So I'll go to my final slide at my conclusion, because I'm out of time. You can skip this, I think. Yeah, so just to conclude, a systems thinking approach is really different from having an intervention. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it is doable. It just means working differently. And I'm happy to also give more information via email. It might be on the next slide. The final slide. Yes, so if you want to get in touch with me, please feel free to send me an email, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.